If you are a PC gamer, the golden era of graphics might just be over. Over the last 48 hours, the entire PC gaming community has pretty much erupted in a firestorm and watched in horror as the most valuable tech company on the entire planet completely betrayed the artistic integrity of the medium. Nvidia just took the main stage at a recent conference, I think it's the GTC 2026 conference, to announce DLSS, a brand new graphics technology that their billionaire CEO, Jensen Huang, is touting the GPT moment for graphics. But instead of improving your frame rates or boosting performance, DLSS acts as a forced generative AI filter that completely overrides a game's original art style. It is actively yassifying characters. That's kind of funny to say, but it's pretty much turning crafted visual worlds into cheap AI generated slop. And the internet is in an uproar, and rightfully so. The official announcement video is, I think it's an 85% dislike ratio, it's very bad. And developers from massive studios all across the world are, publicly panicking because they didn't even know necessarily that Nvidia was using their unreleased games to train this AI. And to make matters even worse, when gamers rightfully complain that this technology is, destroying the soul of video games, the CEO looked right at the camera and told the community that we are, completely wrong. Today we're breaking down this catastrophic launch of DLSS, the unbelievable arrogance of Nvidia, you could say, and why this is the exact moment where AI officially went too far in gaming. For the last few years, DLSS, which stands for, I'm pretty sure, Deep Learning Super Sampling, I think, has actually been one of the most beloved and useful features in PC gaming. Originally, the technology was incredibly, simple and, effective. It took a lower resolution image, used the tensor, cores inside your RTX graphics card to intelligently upscale that image, and gave gamers a pretty respectable boost in frame rate without sacrificing any, visual quality. Well, mostly. It was a tool designed strictly for performance optimization, but at the GTC 2026 keynote, Nvidia decided that simply boosting your frame rate was no longer enough. They went total algorithmic control over the visual identity of the games you play. So during a massive, I think it was 2-hour presentation focused heavily on enterprise agentic AI and also supercomputing, Jensen Huang, unveiled DLSS. So according to the corporate executives, this new version is more than an upscaler. It's a real-time neural rendering model that actively analyzes the game engine and uses generative AI to physically repaint, in quotes, the lighting, the textures, and the characters on the fly. Nvidia claims that it bridges the gap between basic video game rendering and Hollywood-level visual effects. They want your games to look hyper-realistic whenever the original developers intended them to look that way. To truly understand why people are not very happy about this and rejecting this dystopian technology, you have to look at what I will say is the horrifying demonstrations Nvidia actually showed on stage. They booted up hyped up AAA titles on stage, I think Resident Evil, the new one, and also Assassin's Creed, and I think maybe Starfield as well. And they flipped the DLSS switch. And the results were absolutely jarring. Instead of just making the games look sharper, the AI actively hallucinated new details that completely messed up the original artistic direction. I think in the Resident Evil demo, the AI took the more rugged atmosphere of a survival horror game and applied what essentially kind of looked like a cheap Instagram filter. The character faces were completely smoothed out. Harsh cinematic lighting was replaced with a sheen, and the raw emotion of the scene was entirely scrubbed away. The characters they didn't look like they were necessarily surviving a brutal apocalypse. They looked more like AI generated models from a mobile game, in my opinion. It does not look that good. And the backlash from the gaming community was pretty instant and very nuclear. If you look at the official Nvidia GeForce YouTube channel right now, the DLSS video, like I said, it's being completely ratioed into oblivion. We're talking about over I think 85k dislikes, I believe, and has a very big dislike ratio, like I said earlier. And for a company that relies, a big amount on PC gamers buying their, overpriced RTX graphic cards, seeing their flagship software, get universally despised by their core demographic, or used to be, is a catastrophic public relations nightmare. Like gamers do not want a machine learning algorithm like blindly guessing what a character should look like. Like they want to, actually experience the exact like vision and storytelling that the human artist at the studio spent, probably years carefully crafting like what they intended. But the AI hallucinations are actually much worse than just like a glossy sheen. Because with DLSS 5 enabled, the neural rendering was literally hallucinating so badly that characters' eyes, for example, were literally like pointing in two different directions. Like the AI randomly generated stuff like wrinkles on lips that didn't exist in the base like 3D model, and it completely, for example, like deformed the shape of characters' ears. Like because the generative AI doesn't like actually understand human anatomy super well or the physical 3D space, it just like aggressively paints over the screen, creating these, you could say, terrifying uncanny valley mutations that like ruin the immersion, I'll say. But rather than actually listening to the massive wave of community, backlash, Nvidia decided to double down in the most arrogant way possible. So during like a Q&A session following the backlash, the CEO, Jensen Huang, was asked about the thousands of gamers who were complaining that DLSS 5 made games look like a lot worse and that it ruins like the developer's original intent. Instead of, like, for example, taking accountability or admitting that the technology needed some improvement, the billionaire CEO literally stated, well, first of all, they're completely wrong, around the lines of that. He then went on like a massive like corporate rant, claiming that DLSS 5 is more than just like a cheap post-processing filter. He told the tech press that the AI has deep generative controls at the actual 3D geometry level and that it perfectly represents the structured data of the visual like world. He effectively told the entire gaming community that we are all just like too uneducated to understand the sheer genius of his new neural rendering technology. Like, catch me a break. But here's where the story goes from, corporate arrogance to an outright like scandal. Because just a few days after Jensen Huang told the world about DLSS 5 and that it was a complex geometry level rendering miracle, Nvidia's own employees accidentally exposed the truth. Pretty much one of the people on the GeForce marketing team was, I believe, cornered by like YouTubers or the press. And pretty much they were forced to admit how the technology actually works under like the hood. It turns out Jensen Huang was completely exaggerating the capabilities of his own software. Like DLSS 5 does not actually understand the 3D geometry of the game. It does not perfectly map to like the developer's underlying code. According to Nvidia's own engineers, DLSS 5 literally just takes like a flat 2D frame of the game, analyzes it with an AI model trained on massive data sets of internet images, and then just slaps a generative filter over the top of it using like motion vectors. It is a literal definition of yassifying the screen in real time. That's just fun to say. Like the AI is blindly guessing what hair, fabric, and like skin should look like based on its training data, which is exactly why like characters in the demo look so mutated and deformed. Like it is just an AI filter, and the CEO of a multi-trillion-dollar company stood on stage and tried to gaslight the entire gaming industry into thinking like it was a revolution. The gaming community has to draw a massive line in the sand right here. If we blindly accept DLSS 5, we are telling these massive tech monopolies that it is perfectly fine to replace human creativity with algorithmic like slop. We are telling them that we don't care about artistic intent as long as the marketing trailer looks shiny. So I do want to hear from you guys down in the comments below because this is a pretty big topic. I was kind of late on it, but I do agree that this is pretty crazy. Like, do you think this is actually the future or just slop? So yeah, hope you have a good day, and I'll see you next time.